My name is Elias Thorne, and for most of my life, I believed in the quiet strength of unwavering commitment. I was raised in the serene, rolling hills of Oak Haven, a place where the seasons painted the landscape with vibrant strokes, and the rhythm of life moved with a gentle, reassuring pace. My parents, a pair of devoted botanists, instilled in me a deep appreciation for growth not just of plants, but of character. They taught me that true resilience wasn't about resisting change, but about adapting, finding light in shadow, and knowing when to let go of what no longer served you. This upbringing shaped me, giving me a foundation built on integrity, patience, and a quiet determination that I carried into every aspect of my life, especially into my marriage with Lyra. Lyra and I met at the local autumn festival, under a canopy of crimson and gold leaves. She was a whirlwind of vibrant energy, a striking contrast to my more grounded nature, and I was utterly captivated. We built a life together in a charming cottage on the outskirts of Oak Haven, its garden a testament to our shared dreams, or so I thought. I poured my heart into my work as a master craftsman at Everwood Creations, a small workshop nestled by the Whispering River, known for its bespoke wooden furniture and intricate carvings. It was a place where dedication and precision transformed raw timber into enduring beauty, a philosophy I unconsciously extended to my relationships. Our 10th anniversary had recently passed, a quiet affair. I remember the evening distinctly. I pushed open the creaking door of our cottage after a long day at the workshop, the scent of sawdust still clinging to my clothes. Lyra was at the reclaimed oak kitchen island, her phone screen a faint glow beneath a delicately embroidered linen napkin. She slid it away with a practiced grace, her smile a little too swift, a little too bright. "Elias, you're back," she chirped, her voice a melody that used to fill my world with warmth. "Rough day at Everwood?" I heard the river levels were up. I hung my worn leather satchel on its hook by the door, the familiar way to comfort. "Something like that. And the napkin? Are we hiding secrets from the garden gnomes now?" She laughed, a light, airy sound. "Just a small spill. Nothing to concern yourself with, my love." The ancient kettle began to whistle, a gentle hum against the silence that seemed to have taken root between us. The cottage, usually fragrant with the earthy scent of drying herbs and my latest wood finish, now smelled faintly of store-bought lavender and the faint traces of a meal I hadn't shared. A covered plate waited for me in the cold larder, a small, elegant card tucked beneath it. "Warm it gently, darling." It read, her looping script a polite command. "Long day for you two?" I asked, leaning against the cool stone counter, hoping to bridge the chasm I felt widening. "Just usual Oak Haven bustle," she replied, her gaze drifting past me, out towards the twilight fading over the distant Whisperwind peaks. "Serafina has been quite distressed about her current situation. I might visit her later." I didn't press. 10 years of marriage had taught me the delicate dance of space and trust, or so I believed. I clung to the notion that privacy wasn't a precursor to deceit, that people simply held certain thoughts close to their hearts. If only I had recognized the tremor beneath that carefully placed napkin as an early warning, a faint alarm bell in the quiet of our home. I reheated my meal, the flavors muted, and ate standing at the counter while Lyra hummed softly, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the linen napkin, a silent shield. I convinced myself that openness, that understanding, was the path of a decent man. Little did I know, this decency would soon come with a hefty price tag. The following morning, a soft golden light filtered through the kitchen window as Lyra descended the stairs, already deep in conversation. Her voice was a hushed, solicitous whisper, the kind meant to be gently overheard. "Yes, I've already told him we'll have to miss the harvest gathering," she purred into the phone. "He won't mind. He finds large gatherings rather draining." I poured myself a cup of the strong herbal tea I favored, the news settling in my stomach like an unexpected chill. This was news to me. She cupped the receiver briefly, her eyes, usually a vibrant green, now holding a subtle defensiveness. "Relax, Elias. Old Man Hemlock's harvest gathering is always such a tedious affair. Just endless discussions about crop yields and the village council's latest follies. Old Man Hemlock had invited us weeks ago, and I had promised my old friend, Silas, from the workshop that we'd be there. Silas and I had plans to visit the annual Oakhaven Timber Festival afterward. You can see Silas anytime, Elias, she countered, her voice taking on a decisive edge. We need a weekend, just us. A proper reconnection. The final words were delivered with the certainty of a decree. I set my mug down, the gentle clink echoing in the stillness. Lyra, a new understanding, then? I began, my voice calm, but firm. My commitments are not to be unilaterally rearranged. If you desire a weekend together, let us plan it, not have it decreed. She offered a brittle laugh, but her eyes remained cold. Oh, Elias, now we have official decrees? Perhaps we should consult the Oakhaven Bylaws Committee. I pulled out my phone, a sense of quiet resolve hardening within me. I texted Silas. Still on for Hemlocks. Gate opens at noon. Manage your afternoon as you wish. I won't abandon my friends for romantic pretense. She clicked her tongue, a faint sign of irritation. Are you forgetting we're bound by sacred vows, Elias? No, I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. I recall them every time you make decisions for both of us. The pushback clearly stung. She turned the faucet on full, the rushing water a curtain between us. Fine, do as you please. You always do, don't you? I stirred my tea, the fragrant steam rising around my face. That, Lyra, is precisely the point. She moved around me with a slow, deliberate ballet, an unspoken declaration that I was an obstruction in my own kitchen. If we do go, she added, her voice laced with a familiar condescension, please try not to lecture everyone about sustainable forestry and the precise tensile strength of white oak. They don't need your master craftsman pronouncements. Don't worry, I replied, my voice even. I'll stick to sampling the spiced apple cider. I offered a small, knowing smile, then slid my phone back into my pocket. She kissed the air near my cheek, a gesture devoid of warmth. We shall see. In the driveway, she paused, checking her phone again. A new floral perfume, a vibrant energy, an old hand-stitched blouse worn with a theatrical air. I loaded a cooler of local Oakhaven cheeses and seasonal fruits into the bed of my rugged utility vehicle, watching her thumbs fly across the screen, a private smile playing on her lips as if the device held a secret joke meant only for her. My weekend, it seemed, had just taken an interesting turn and not the kind that promised mending. Old Man Hemlock's sprawling orchard was already bustling by noon, a kaleidoscope of autumnal colors and cheerful chatter. Folding tables laden with pies, coolers overflowing with beverages, and the familiar figure of Barnaby, the self-proclaimed grill master of Oakhaven, presiding over a smoky barbecue pit. Lyra, ever the social butterfly, worked the fence line like a seasoned diplomat, light on physical touch, heavy on captivating eye contact. Silas clapped me on the shoulder, his grin wide. Elias, you look like you've just emerged from a debate on ancient woodworking techniques. Everything all right, my friend? I'm quite well, I assured him, inclining my head towards Lyra. We're simply navigating a new phase, aren't we all? Serafina, Lyra's closest friend, seemed to materialize from behind a towering apple tree, her long braid woven with crimson ribbons, her oversized sunglasses reflecting the autumn sky. She and Lyra embraced with the practiced grace of a carefully choreographed dance. Finally, Lyra, Serafina exclaimed, her voice carrying across the gathering. You've escaped the tyranny of your husband's ledgers and blueprints. Lyra smirked, a glint in her eye. Don't start, Serafina. He's in his new understandings phase. Aunt Alara, a kindly woman known for her legendary spice cider, overheard and chuckled, ever the peacemaker. New understandings, eh? How delightful. We're embracing those now. Oh, it's quite charming, really, Lyra continued, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. He announced it over our morning tea, like a new decree from the Oakhaven Council. I placed a bottle of my homemade elderflower cordial on the table, stepping into the conversation before the narrative could harden into irreversible fact. Indeed. Understanding number 1. Commitments made are commitments kept. Understanding number 2. Stop fabricating reasons for my supposed social anxieties to excuse your own disinclination. The impromptu script faltered. Lyra blinked, her smile tightening. Serafina's lips curved into a subtle, almost imperceptible smile, like she'd just caught the faint scent of rain. Someone's a little sensitive, aren't they? I faced Lyra directly, my voice steady. Do not use me as a convenient excuse to evade your own social obligations. She let out a short, dismissive puff of laughter. Oh, Elias, relax. No one's judging. We're simply jesting. Good, I stated. Then let us conclude this particular jest. I gestured towards the cooler. Please take your portion of the spiced cider. I'm departing shortly for the Timber Festival with Silas. Do you wish to accompany us? I paused, allowing the question to hang in the air. I will not remain here to be the subject of veiled ridicule. Silas raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. I can drive, if this has become a situation. It's not a situation, Lyra insisted, but her voice held a sharp edge of frustration. You're turning a trifle into a grand spectacle. Aunt Alara, with her innate hostess's wisdom, intervened gently. Let's all partake in some pie first, and any disagreements can wait until after dessert. I am not engaging in disagreement, I clarified. I am simply establishing clarity. Lyra stared at me over the rim of her delicate ceramic cup, her eyes flashing with a mix of surprise and resentment. Must you employ that master craftsman tone in my social interactions? I turned to Silas. Do you perceive a master craftsman tone, my friend? Or merely a husband who has learned to articulate his needs? Silas, ever the loyal and observant friend, deadpanned. I hear a man who has clearly mastered the art of polite boundary setting. I took a deep breath, finding my center. Let me be explicit, Lyra, I said, my voice devoid of anger, merely resolute. I am not your comedic foil. I will not passively allow you to elevate your own standing by diminishing mine. Our previous discussion on this matter, it seems, did not resonate. Therefore, this is the natural progression. I shall depart in 10 minutes. You may accompany me, or you may ride with Serafina. The choice is yours. Serafina shrugged, a small, knowing gesture. I can certainly give you a lift, Lyra. Excellent, I said, wiping my hands on a napkin and extending one to Old Man Hemlock. Thank you for your generous hospitality. Save me a slice of that apple pie. Lyra rolled her eyes, but I caught the fleeting expression anger mixed with a flicker of apprehension. Control, I realized, detested being challenged, especially when her chosen audience was privy to the defiance. Precisely 10 minutes later, as promised, I walked towards my utility vehicle with Silas. Lyra did not follow. Bold move, my friend, Silas murmured as we buckled our seatbelts. Not boldness, I corrected. Merely an exhaustion with being cast in roles not of my choosing. Silas let out a low whistle. Will you be returning for her? She always seems to have options. As we pulled away, I glanced in the side mirror. Serafina had enveloped Lyra in a tight embrace, whispering intently near her ear, her hands gripping Lyra's arms. I didn't care for the tableau. Not at all. The vehicle that brought Lyra home that night was not mine. She entered the cottage quietly, much later than the Timber Festival had concluded, her shoes held delicately in her hand, her phone placed face down on the polished console table. She prepared a simple herbal sandwich, a peace offering, and brought it to me on the hearthside bench where I was reading. Elias, she began, her voice soft, penitent. I was out of line earlier. Work at the Oakhaven boutique has been rather demanding. Please don't be upset. I didn't perform a theatrical display of forgiveness. I simply ate the sandwich. The remedy is straightforward, I told her, my voice gentle but firm. When you wish to offer a jest, let your own name be the subject. When you desire a weekend together, articulate that desire. When you require transport, make the necessary arrangements. She nodded too quickly, her eyes averted. Understood. Noted. Her phone buzzed against the polished wood of the console table, a persistent tremor. She didn't move. We both listened as it continued for 3 beats too long. Who might that be? I inquired, the quiet question hanging in the air. Serafina. She replied without checking the screen. She's quite miserable about her current romantic entanglement. I do hope she finds clarity soon. She will, I said, rising to place the plate in the larder. Lyra turned her phone screen down once more. I allowed the silence to settle between us, heavy and revealing. People, I've learned, often reveal their true selves in the pauses, in the unspoken narratives. One only needs to listen long enough to hear the faint cracks in the facade. Late Tuesday, I awoke with a strange sense of disquiet, the cottage holding that peculiar stillness of the deep night. I glanced at the antique clock on the bedside table, 2:13 a.m. The soft glow of the hall light bled beneath the bedroom door. Lyra's side of the bed was empty. I waited, listening for the familiar sound of a flushing cistern. Nothing. The front door, an old oak piece with hinges that sang a peculiar, quiet tune, a ridiculous sound. Really, like a child pilfering sweetmeats, then the soft double click of the latch. I sat up, not in panic, not seeking a dramatic confrontation. Jeans, a thick woolen jumper, my sturdy boots. I took the spare keys from their hook and, after a slow count of 30, stepped out onto the driveway. The street was a hushed tableau of sleeping windows. Her sleek sedan was gone. I opened the door of my utility vehicle, not slamming it shut, an old habit. The engine turned over with a low, comforting cough, and I rolled out slowly, 2 houses behind, a shadow in the pre-dawn gloom. People often assume surveillance is inherently dramatic. It is not. It is a quiet study of signals, of turns, of a measured patience. She took the winding main road to the edge of Oakhaven, past the old mill, past the general store with its flickering, half-lit sign. She did not turn toward Seraphina's quaint riverside cottage. She continued onto the old highway, then took an exit to a forgotten strip where an ancient neon vacancy sign hummed a dying tune. I parked down the block, behind a derelict landscaping trailer, and watched her pull into the second lot, where the numbers on the cottage doors were faded, and the vending machine emitted a mournful groan like a refrigerator in its last throes. She didn't see me. She didn't look around. She checked her phone once more, then walked directly into one of the cottages. No need to narrate the rest. The picture was complete. I didn't sound my horn. I didn't beat upon the door. I simply sat there until the dashboard clock had stolen 20 minutes, minutes I would never account for. Then I drove home. In the driveway, I looked at our cottage, at the upstairs window that held our bed, and locked my jaw around a simple, unyielding truth. Respect cannot survive this. I brewed coffee at 4:20 a.m., like an old soul who had lost track of time. At 6, I showered, dressed, and left a note on the kitchen island. Early start at Everwood. At 8, I parked by the Oakhaven County building, filled out the forms the clerk slid under the glass, and scheduled what grown people schedule when a boundary isn't merely crossed, but irrevocably erased. No courtroom oratory, just signatures, dates, and the quiet resolve of a man who no longer offered discounts on his peace. Back at the workshop, I locked my office cabinet, carefully boxed my essential personal items, and changed the security code I had foolishly shared. I moved my specialized tools from the cottage's shared garden shed to my secure workshop. I paused the shared credit account and rerouted the cottage's utility autopay to my personal account with a polite, concise email. Effective today, all household expenses will be managed individually. Please ensure your portion is remitted by the 5th of each month. I called Silas. I need the spare room at your cottage for a few nights, my friend. I didn't cry in his workshop. Silas would simply have handed me a clean rag and averted his gaze. Are you certain, Elias? He asked, his voice soft with concern. Yes. Will you speak with her? When there is something meaningful to say. I returned home early, cooked a large pot of my mother's hearty Oakhaven stew, needing the cottage to smell of something I had chosen, something comforting and authentic. I greeted Lyra at 5:30 p.m. with the measured politeness one reserves for acquaintances after an unremarkable Tuesday. She was bright, almost unnaturally so. Elias, darling, she offered, dropping her handbag onto the console table. I apologize for my recent tone. Things at the boutique have been utterly chaotic, and I thought perhaps we could have a proper date night this Friday. My treat. How thoughtful, I replied, stirring the stew. I shall consult my calendar. She looked genuinely surprised by the phrase, my calendar, then forced a brittle grin. Oh, I'll text Seraphina. Tell her I'm off the grid for the evening. She'll manage. Of course, she chirped, digging into her bag. Do we have any of those delightful cedarwood candles left? In the drawer by the oven, I answered. Perfect, she exclaimed. All right, I'm going to freshen up. Do, I said, the steam from the stew fogging my spectacles. She kissed the air near my temple and disappeared upstairs. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a short, impersonal notification. Your documents will be ready for pickup tomorrow by 3 p.m. I read it twice, as if staring harder might alter its stark reality. By sunrise, a boundary had been irrevocably violated. The next move was mine. Wednesday morning, Lyra appeared at my workshop, a small woven basket in her hand and a sweetness that seemed at odds with her demeanor. "Elias, I've brought you lunch," she announced, placing the basket on my workbench. "Fresh bread and smoked trout, no dill, just the way you like it." "I recall your specificity," I replied, wiping my hands on a rag. Marta, my ever-observant office manager, peeked out from her doorway, assessing the scene with the astute perception of a woman who had witnessed countless domestic dramas from behind her desk. She retreated before the moment could fully solidify into awkwardness. Lyra held her posture like a delicate pose in a sculpture. "We've been rather distant lately, Elias," she ventured, her voice soft. "I truly dislike it." "I don't either," I conceded. "I prefer clarity." She nodded towards the sturdy metal cabinet in my office. "You've changed the code?" "I have," I confirmed. "Several of my bespoke clients have requested enhanced security measures for their designs. You might have informed me." "I just did." She offered a small, forced laugh, as if she'd stumbled upon an unexpected door. "Right. Of course. So Friday is still open for our date?" "Perhaps," I said, my voice neutral. "I need to confirm some timber deliveries." "Must you be so guarded?" she asked, a hint of exasperation creeping into her tone. "I am making an effort here." "I see your effort." She reached across the workbench, her palm upturned, a silent invitation. "I miss us, Elias." "Then cease undermining me in public." "That was but a single occasion." "It has become a pattern," I corrected gently. "I am sorry." Her jaw tensed. "So, what else do you demand from me?" "Nothing," I answered honestly. "I desire only what I am actively creating." Her phone, nestled within her handbag, lit up with a faint glow. She pretended not to notice. I caught the reflection of the screen on the polished metal of the workbench. No name, just a string of numbers. She pushed the basket closer to me. "Please, eat. At least permit me that much." "I shall," I said, my expression unyielding. "And we are implementing one more change." "What now?" "As of this month, we shall divide all household expenditures. Half the provisions, half the utilities, half the incidentals. I have sent you a detailed ledger. Your share is due by the 5th, and we shall maintain clean records." Her eyebrows arched in disbelief. "Since when do we resort to such trivial accounting?" "It is not trivial," I countered. "It is clarity." "So, you are punishing me because I made a jest at Old Man Hemlock's gathering?" I shook my head. "You may frame it as you wish. My intention is simply to establish boundaries and maintain transparent accounts." She drew in a sharp breath, as if poised for further argument, then pivoted. "Fine. You desire transparency? Then Friday evening is on me. I shall inform Serafina that I am off her radar. We will share a quiet dinner. We will converse. No phones." "No phones sounds agreeable," I conceded, keeping my face impassive. She straightened, as if she had earned a small victory, then touched my shoulder with a fleeting squeeze, a practiced gesture of affection. "Very well, I shall see you tonight." Marta, ever the silent observer, reappeared as Lyra departed, her arms crossed, her gaze knowing but not unkind. "Do you require anything, Elias?" "I am quite all right, Marta." "Are you certain?" "I am." Marta nodded, like a judge whose verdict was quietly delivered. "She is enacting a strategy. Maintain your steadfastness." My phone buzzed at 2:47 p.m. "Your documents are ready for pickup." I closed the workshop early and drove to the county building. 10 minutes later, I walked out with a manila envelope, my face betraying nothing. That evening, Lyra was a picture of domestic sweetness. She cooked my favorite Oakhaven stew. She set the table with an elegance usually reserved for a magazine spread. She inquired about my day with genuine follow-up questions. The effort she exerted was palpable, like a heavy woolen shawl wrapped tightly around her. When we finished, she loaded the dishwashing machine without a sigh and illuminated the small lantern in the corner, a piece she always claimed made the room feel warmer. "I'm just going to call Serafina quickly," she said, wiping her hands on a linen cloth. 2 minutes in the garden, darling? The reception is always better by the old oak tree." She smiled, a fleeting, almost artificial expression, and stepped outside. I watched her through the window pane. She angled her body away from the door, covering her mouth with her hand as she spoke, a habit I'd observed in bustling inns and one she had never unlearned. When she returned, She was all softness once more. Serafina sends her regards. Return them, I said, stacking the plates. My phone, resting on the counter, lit up with her text at 9:14 p.m., a mere 15 minutes after she had bid me good night and ascended the stairs. I believe I shall stay at Serafina's tonight. Girl talk and a silly film. Do not worry yourself, Elias. I stood in the kitchen and read it twice, then thrice. The language of those who wish to avoid interrogation. Do not worry, a phrase invariably deployed when one plans precisely the actions that will trigger concern. I typed, I was unaware your friend resided in a roadside inn, pressed send, and then placed my phone down as if it were a tool I had finished using. Then I moved. I retrieved the manila envelope from my satchel, resting it deliberately in the center of the dining table, a black quill pen placed atop it like a silent exclamation point. I packed a sturdy canvas duffel with clothes, my toothbrush, chargers, my passport, and the spare property deeds I had already secured at the workshop. I took my grandfather's antique watch and the photograph of my father from the bookshelf. On a small, unadorned card, I inscribed 8 words. This was your choice, not mine. I left it beside the envelope. Silas texted, Gate code is 6752. Key beneath the ceramic frog statue. I turned off the lights one by one. In the hall, I paused and looked up the stairs. I felt no surge of triumph, no righteous indignation. I felt, quite simply, done. Her response arrived swiftly. Wait, what? Where are you? Are you home? Then, a call. I watched it ring, the vibrant glow of her name blooming and fading like a distant lighthouse on a coastline I no longer had any obligation to navigate. Another text. I am returning, please. I set my phone to do not disturb and stepped outside. The air carried that damp, earthy scent just before a cleansing rain. I locked the front door, the key sliding into my pocket with a soft clink, and walked to my utility vehicle. As I pulled away, her message status changed to read. 10 minutes later, another call went to voicemail, dissolving into the ether the way the vast ocean accepts everything one offers it. By the time her headlights swept across the front of our cottage, I was 6 miles away, steering towards Silas's place, my duffel bag on the passenger seat, utterly devoid of any interest in further theatrics. If there is a precise moment when one transitions from a man who negotiates to a man who acts, it occurs without fanfare or confetti. It is simply a turn signal, and one makes the turn. I slept at Silas's as if sleep were a sacred task I had to perform with dignity. In the morning, I drove to my workshop early, unlatched the heavy wooden door, and began to work through the new order log as if the world had not tilted on its axis. Lyra called at 7:03, 7:12, 7:15. I allowed the calls to stack, my phone a silent, persistent alarm. At 8, she texted, We need to talk, please. I brewed a fresh pot of herbal tea and sent a single, concise message. The papers are on the dining table. Read the note. She arrived at the workshop at 9:40 a.m., her breath coming in short, sharp gasps, yet her demeanor was composed, as if she had rehearsed her lines in the vehicle. Marta saw her through the glass panel of the office door and wisely remained at her desk. Lyra walked directly to my workbench. What is this? She demanded, holding up her phone, which displayed a photograph of the manila envelope. What precisely are you doing? Ending it with dignity. I replied, my voice calm and steady. Based on what? She pressed, her voice rising. A text message? You are leaping to conclusions because I desired an evening with a friend. I rinsed a teacup under the tap. You departed at 2 o'clock in the morning 2 nights ago. You drove to the highway and exited at the flickering neon sign of a roadside inn. People are rarely so inventive when they are acting innocently. She blinked, then quickly regained her composure. You followed me? Are you serious, Elias? That is surveillance. That is insane. It is called confirmation, I stated. You do not even comprehend what you witnessed. I comprehend enough. You are married to me. You do not surveil me. You speak to me. I did for months, I replied. Then for days, then for hours. Now, I am doing something else. She lowered her voice, as if the diminished volume could somehow alter the stark arithmetic of our situation. This is a grave error, Elias. We have simply experienced a difficult period. A difficult period involves tone and shared chores, I corrected. A difficult period does not involve motel keys at 2 o'clock in the morning. You are being cruel. I am being clear. She shifted tactics. We can rectify this, Elias. Counseling, whatever you desire. I will dedicate any weekend you wish. I will cease making those jests. I will cease bargaining with a house you have already forfeited. You do not possess the authority to be both judge and jury, I stated. I do, I affirmed, when I am drawing my own boundary. She stared at me, as if her gaze alone could weave me back into the comfortable narrative of our past. I left because I felt disregarded. I simply yearned for attention. That is all. You yearned for options, I corrected, my voice unwavering. You desired the comforts of this home and the thrill of elsewhere. You wished for me to bear the financial burdens while you harbored secrets. Do not put words in my mouth, she snapped. I did not put anything in your mouth, I retorted. That occurred last night. She slapped the workbench lightly, a dull thud of metal against her palm. You humble me in front of your staff and your friends. You leave these documents like a trap, and I am the one devoid of respect. Marta opened her office door with the impeccable timing of an arbiter who knew precisely when to intervene. Elias, the timber merchant is here for the intake. She looked at Lyra, her expression resolute. Lyra took a step back, her eyes fixed on me. If you proceed with this, you will dismantle everything we have painstakingly constructed. No, I corrected. You dismantled it. I am merely refusing to sweep up the debris. She swallowed hard. I need to retrieve my belongings. You may do so when I am at home, I said. Text me a specific time frame. I will be present, and we will not be alone. You are being utterly ridiculous, she hissed, her voice laced with venom. I am not a threat. You are a liability. That single word struck a chord, a truth she clearly did not wish to acknowledge. Liability, a term for something one continues to pay for long after it has ceased to be useful. She wrapped her arms around herself, casting another glance at Marta, the presence of an observer clearly diminishing the satisfaction of a public confrontation. Answer my calls, she demanded, a final, desperate plea. I will not. You cannot simply shut me out. I can, I stated, my voice holding an unyielding finality. And I am. She stood for another second, her expression a mix of fury and disbelief, then spun on her heel and departed. The workshop door swung shut, the small bell above it jingling with that cheap, hollow sound that diminishes everything. Marta waited a beat, then stepped to my workbench, placing a small slip of paper down. Do you require me to call Silas if she returns? I am fine, Marta. You are not entirely fine, Elias, she said softly, her gaze compassionate. But you are steady. That is enough. It is, I agreed. She nodded, returned to her office, and the workshop continued its quiet hum. People still required bespoke furniture, no matter whose life was engulfed in flames. That night, I drove to the cottage, my phone unread, 25 messages stacked like fallen timber. I walked in, retrieved the manila envelope, added a copy of the meticulously detailed expense ledger, and left the original note precisely where it was. I removed my photographs from the walls, carefully boxing the ones that predated our meeting. I changed the password on the home network and the garden shed's keypad. I removed my name from her utility account and established my own. I slept at Silas's again. She called 3 more times. I allowed my phone to manage the calls. One desires results. Here, then, is the orderly conclusion. The division of our property proved far less contentious than many fear, primarily because I had meticulously attended to the details. The cottage had been in my name before our marriage, its title unblemished. We had refinanced once, and I had ensured the difference was handled. The workshop was solely mine. She had never held any claim there. Our vehicles were separate. Our accounts were meticulously divided according to the ledger, a process handled with the pragmatic efficiency of adults who do not cloak their affairs in poetic sentiment. I retained what I had built. She retained what she had brought into the marriage. Clean. No pretense. No dramatic displays. 3 months later, I encountered her at the Oakhaven Market, the smaller one with the charming, albeit cramped, parking lot and the superior array of apples. I was accompanied by Hannah, a serene and insightful woman I had met through a timber supplier, a calm, grounded soul who appreciated quiet mornings and a silence that required no desperate filling. Lyra was standing in the artisanal paper goods aisle, meticulously scanning prices as if deciphering ancient prophecies. She looked up, her gaze locking with mine, and froze. "Elias," she finally uttered, her voice a little breathless. "Lyra," I replied, my greeting simple and unadorned. Hannah, comfortable in her own skin, offered a gentle nod. "Hi, I'm going to grab some elderflower cordial," she said, inclining her head to the left, and walked on. Lyra's eyes flicked to my basket fresh produce, some locally sourced cheeses, a bag of artisanal coffee, then back to me. "You appear occupied with your work," she offered. "That is my enduring passion," I replied. "How are you, Lyra?" A phrase that, in these circumstances, often subtly asks, "Tell me if my assumptions about your collapse are incorrect." "Solid." She inhaled deeply, as if preparing to deliver a grand soliloquy, but the necessary props were absent. "I've been staying with Serafina for a short while. It has been rather complicated. I trust you will find a suitable place to land," I offered gently. "I will," she said too quickly, a hint of defensiveness in her tone. "How is the workshop?" "Busy," I confirmed. She glanced at Hannah in the distance. "And she is good to me," I added. "I, in turn, am good to her. That, I believe, is the fundamental understanding, is it not?" She muttered, "Elias, about everything. I truly wish it had not transpired as it did. It transpired as it had to. I truly never imagined you would actually." She trailed off, the unspoken words hanging in the crisp market air. "You know," I finished for her. "I know." She managed a fragile smile. A smile she did not owe me. "Well, you do look better." "I am." We stood for a second in the clean, fluorescent light of a place that sold artisanal bread and local honey. Two people who had once shared a home and now shared nothing but a postal code. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the only lingering nervous gesture she possessed. "I should depart," she said, her voice softer now. "My preserves are due for collection." "Do not be late," I replied. She laughed a little, a faint, almost bewildered sound, then stopped when she realized I meant it as a simple wish for her well-being.